Hey there, micro friends. Welcome to another episode of Let's Talk Micro. As always, I am so happy that you're here with me. And if this is the first time you're listening to Let's Talk Micro, well, thank you for choosing it as one of your podcasts. I know there are many choices out there, so I appreciate it. Okay, so I want to welcome you to the very first Micro Minutes episode, and this is a part of a series that we have here, a brand new series here in the podcast, where we break down one microbiology topic in under 10 minutes. And this is a really good way to pick a topic and just, keep it very short, focused to the point. So let's go ahead and talk about today's topic, which is MacConkey agar and why it can be trusted to tell you everything you think it does. And that sounds very dramatic, right? So let's go ahead and jump into it. So let me give you a scenario. In those of you that work in the lab in clinical microbiology, let's say you get a wound culture. You plate it, on blood, chocolate, and MacConkey, as we normally do. The next day, nothing is growing on Mac. You have growth on blood agar, and you have growth on chocolate, but no growth on MacConkey. And then you think, okay, it is not growing on MacConkey, so this is not a gram-negative rod. Maybe you have moldy stuff in your lab, maybe that day is down, and you don't want to do a gram stain, so you're like, okay, I'm safe. Not growing on MacConkey, I don't have a gram-negative rod. Well, that is wrong, because then that's how you misidentify Pastorella, Haemophilus, Eikenella, and that's, those are the ones that you commonly see in the lab. There's also the ones that you're hoping you don't see, right? They're less common, but they might come across your bench, like Brucella, Francisella. So this is myth number 1 when it comes to MacConkey. And this is, if it doesn't grow on Mac, it is not a gram-negative rod. So let's talk about MacConkey agar real quick. MacConkey is selective and differential. It is selective for gram-negative rods, and I know that you see literature out there that says you selective for enterics, selective for gram-negative, but the more appropriate term will be selective for gram-negative rods, because gram-negative cocci are not gonna grow in MacConkey. So, selective for gram-negative rods, and it is differential for lactose fermentation, right? And this, like with your Enterobacterales, like E. coli, Klebsiella, that they ferment lactose. And then you have organisms like Salmonella, Shigella, Proteus, that they do not ferment lactose. So, MacConkey is selective and differential. However, there are some fastidious gram-negative rods that do not grow on MacConkey. They have some growth requirements that MacConkey does not provide. And examples, as I mentioned earlier, they're Haemophilus, Pastorella, Eikenella. So these organisms, they're not going to grow on MacConkey. So therefore, if you're thinking, as I said, for this myth number 1, if it doesn't grow on Mac, it is not a gram-negative rod, that is incorrect. And this is something that unfortunately I have seen in the lab. Sometimes people don't do a gram stain. They assume that it is not a gram-negative rod. They, let's say, set up like a gram-positive card on the Vitek, for example, and they get something like Cocuria, which that ID you have to be careful with, because when you set something that is like a gram-negative on a gram-positive ID card on the Vitek, you will get this Cocuria ID. So people have received this ID and then they have accepted it, and this is not responsible microbiology. So do not assume when it comes to MacConkey. As always, do a gram stain, see the patient history, look at the whole picture. If the culture is part of a direct, if the culture had a direct smear done, check that too. Correlate everything, but do not assume. Now let's go ahead and jump to the other myth. So myth number 2, if it does grow on MacConkey, it must be a gram-negative rod, right? That sounds very simple. I just talked about MacConkey and I said that it is selective for gram-negative rods, differential for lactose fermentation. So if it's growing, it is a gram-negative rod, right? Well, that might not be the case. Did you know that yeast can grow MacConkey agar? You can see organisms like Candida glabrata, Candida parapsilosis, they can grow on MacConkey. And what you see with this, however, just to be clear, because when it comes to gram-negative rods, right, your enterobacteriales, your non-fermenters like Acinetobacter, Pseudomonas, Stenotrophomonas, those they grow quite large on MacConkey. So when you have yeast growing on MacConkey, you see like these pinpoint colonies. So be careful. You see this pinpoint growth, do not assume that it is a gram-negative rod. If you do so, then you might end up setting an ID card, get like a wrong identification, and then once again, you might potentially put your patient in harm. So, bottom line, if you see those small colonies, do a gram stain and then sub it to another plate, like a Candida agar plate to like a blood plate, so you can do more testing. But remember, yeast can grow on MacConkey. And this is something that you see on media. And I have talked about this before. But even though some plates, they have a purpose for something, they have ingredients to select for some organisms and inhibit other organisms, you still get some presentations where other organisms that are not intended for the agar actually can grow on it. So the real lesson here is, MacConkey agar is a tool. It's not a diagnostic tool. It is a tool that is used to help you to recover your organisms and help you a little bit in the identification and recovery. As I said, it can help separate your lactose fermenters from your non-lactose fermenters, but it cannot confirm the organism identity. Of course, doesn't determine a gram reaction. So your MacConkey result must be interpreted with the gram stain, specimen type, and the whole clinical picture. So from all this, there are two takeaways. No growth on MacConkey does not rule out a gram-negative rod, and growth on MacConkey does not always equal bacteria. And there you have it. I hope you enjoyed the first episode of Micro Minutes. I'm planning on doing more, so stay tuned. As always, you can find us on all social platforms. If you go to Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Blue Sky Social, there we are as Let's Talk Micro, on X as Let's Talk Micro 1, LinkedIn as Luis Plaza. There's an email address which is letstalkmicro@outlook.com, and there's the website letstalkmicro.com, where you can find resources such as study materials, licensing resources, episode updates, and more. So I invite you to subscribe to the podcast, download episodes, and if the app allows you to do so, please leave a review. As always, I am so grateful for your support. And you can find us on any podcast platform. If you go to Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, GoodPods, we are right there. So please subscribe. If you want to support us in any way, you can do so via Venmo or via Buy Me a Coffee, KOFI, both links available on the show notes. And if you're looking to learn more about antibiotics, please check out www.learnantibiotics.com and the Learn Antibiotics book, available on Amazon. These resources include cheat sheets, practice tests, games, and more, and they are being used by thousands of people worldwide and may be helpful for you or your colleagues. And these are some great resources from Dr. Timothy Gauthier, a very passionate pharmacist. And as you know, the Let's Talk Micro podcast is supported by the American Society for Microbiology. To learn more about microbes, visit asm.org. And that, my dear micro friends, is the end of this episode. I hope you enjoyed this brand new episode of this new series, Micro Minutes. As always, I enjoy sharing this information with you, right? This was very quick, to the point. These are some common misconceptions in the lab, some assumptions that can sometimes, get people in trouble, and at the same time, potentially put your patients in harm. So, I hope this is helpful. Thank you for the support. Stay tuned. Great things coming your way. But please, continue bringing that passion to what you do. It's so important. You do such great work. So, as always, stay motivated, stay safe, And of course, continue talking micro. Until the next time. Bye.